Good evening, one and all, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Author's Outpost. This is 17 episodes deep. I can't believe it's actually been going on that long. It just sure felt like I just started doing this not that long ago. Carol, you are muted, by the way. I can see your little symbol. Um, I would like everyone to thank you for joining this evening. We are live here on YouTube. We are live on Twitter as well, if you are so inclined. We are also simul streaming on Rumble. If you could do us a favor, go over to Rumble, give us a little bit of a algorithm boost over there. Smash that little thumbs up button, drop a little comment, try and help us get up there because we're trying to build over on that new tech site. And for anyone who's watching, we are also live over on Carrow's YouTube channel. Get that content and get it going. Thank you to everyone who is here. And my guest this evening is an independently published author, someone who has written some, how was it described? Urban fantasy and a little bit of romance, as well as a few other bits of work here and there, as well as a member of the much acclaimed and much talked about these days Rippaverse team over in the indie comic scene. So we're kind of touching on two little communities here in the indie novels, the indie comics, and anything I can do to bring both those communities together in some way is always going to be a win in my point. Carol, thank you for joining me this evening.
Oh no, thank you for inviting me. I was so thrilled. You were doing like a stream where it was like open door, and I was like, oh man, any other day I would be there. And I told you, and you're like, well, just come on in. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I'm not terribly walled off from anybody. Most of the time, most of my guests are like right place, right time, or other people are like, hey, you want to come on my show? And like, yeah, why not? If I could, time is no factor. Before we get started, I'm going to roll to see how the live stream goes. A bit of a tradition here. And because it's the beginning of October, we're in the middle of spooky month, I got an appropriate dice. Now, it's a little hard to see, but there's a little bit of Halloween dice that I got. It's got a little pumpkin on the D20 spot. And we're going to see how how spooky month treats us. No fudging the dice, not on my table. That's a 10. Perfectly average, just like me. We're going to, before we get started, we're going to go and we're going to say hello to the chat and see who's here, because without the chat, I don't got nothing. And I thank everybody from the Iron Age and elsewhere for dropping in. I'm going to say hello to Hail the Lord. Good to see you. Carrow Brown, who is double dipping.
Yes, that was me.
Ultimate Kahuna, who is here over from the Iron Age. Mr. Christopher D. Brand, thank you for jumping in. John, yes, this is a simulcast. We're and like Carol said, I did say it was okay. I'm very happy for anybody to, simul stream. Feel free to take advantage of my monthly StreamYard subscription. Trippy Soul, good to see you. AC Pritchard, good to see you as well. I'm Abomination AJ, what up, people? Cool Gamer, thank you for dropping in. Mr. Author Michael F. Kane, good to see you this evening, sir. Tony Capone Comics, what's up, guys? What's up? We're about to have a good show. Author Herman P. Hunter, the apostate has arrived. Ha, I get that reference. Katie from Periopsis Press waves at us. Good to see you, Katie. Controversial Opinion says, hey, good to see you too here. I don't know how in the world to pronounce that. Akos Kovacs?
You have a name.
I'm gonna call you.
Good job.
I'm gonna call you AK. And Brandon 698, thank you for dropping in. This is somebody I take it.
That's Brandon. He's the warehouse manager.
Oh, Brandon. Brandon, good to see you, man.
He did this amazing video about how to assemble the short box.
I passed him up earlier because your avatars look very similar. Caffeinated Wolf, good to see you. A fellow Xenoblade Chronicles fan. Always happy to have one of those. And Kane Walker just dropped in. Thank you guys for showing up. Much appreciated. And Hail the Lord doing the mod thing. Thank you for showing up, sir. So, Carol, welcome to the Author's Outpost. Thank you for coming in today. Like I said, I like to bring all my authors back to the beginning. Tell me about where the process, where did the journey to become an author start with you?
I guess the first thing I ever wrote was something for a book report. I read this, I guess, middle grade novel at the time. And I got so upset with the book that in the middle of class, when I finished reading it, like I just kind of like threw it on my desk, and my teacher walked over and she's like, "Is there a problem?" I was like, "Yeah, the ending of this book is garbage, right?" And she's like, well, what's wrong with it? So I explained it to her, and she's like, you know what, for your report, if you want to write, 5 to 10 pages of a different ending, I'll take that. And I was like, bet, right? I'm allowed to say that. Brandon said I could say it now. And so that's pretty much where it started. And then as I grew older and I got more into books and reading them, I always enjoyed writing. But I'll never forget this. I had a teacher who told me to find another job at the same time because she's like, you won't be able to make yourself a living as an author, so you'll have to go find something else. And trying to figure out what I wanted to do as an adult outside of writing has continued to be an ongoing process. So I'm still working on that.
That's the thing about those school guidance counselors. Hello, Royce. Good to see you. Awesome to see us both on stream. I agree. Um, I remember when I was younger, and the school guidance counselors, they were always proposing, like the most mundane jobs. Oh, you could be an accountant, you could be a tradesman, and they never said like, you could probably be a pro wrestler. You could probably go and write comic books. They never had good fun jobs. It was always boring, stable, white collar work, and I never particularly felt inclined towards a lot of what they suggested. That's just me. So
sorry, I'm trying to like do some minor tech support with this mic. I have a new one coming tomorrow for anybody who is asking.
Okay.
This one is complete trash, and this is unfortunately the only one I have to work with. So I do apologize for the fading in and out. So.
Oh, that's fine. I was telling Carol before the stream started, my headphones going out too. I can only hear out of this speaker, and the wire's in a position where if I move at all, it might stop working and I can't hear anything. So that would be most unfortunate. Mm-hmm. So you decided to kind of throw that advice away and just start writing on your own.
I was always a writer. I mean, when I wasn't doing it professionally, I was actually just doing a whole bunch of fan fiction. So, like, Dragon Ball Z, Inuyasha, all the cool anime, right? Like when I was growing up in the 1990s and the early 2000s, and I never really did anything big with it. But what happened was, I didn't really take it super seriously until I was older. In 2018 is when I decided I was going to write a book and try and get it published. And I actually did get it published through an indie house for a little while, and I ended up getting it back. But the moment that I got the acceptance letter from like the publisher was kind of like my validation that this was something that I could do. And what I needed to do was just keep working on that skill and keep honing it. And so I've done lots of different writing experiments and played with like kind of different genres and stuff like that to see where my thing for that is. But it's, I mean, just like anything else, it's never, you never stop learning, you never stop trying to be better at it. I mean, because every time I've met somebody who says that they're kind of like at the peak of their game, I'm like, but there's still more to do, right? Like,
yeah, there's always room for improvement, especially when it comes to that. And I found this interesting. I wasn't big on the fan fiction, but I did write. For those who don't know, fanfiction.net, like the site for fan fiction, they have a sister site called fictionpress.org. And that was where I wrote a lot of stories. And it's essentially the same format, but instead of for fan fiction, it's for original works, right? So essentially that's where I was putting a lot of stuff. And that can get you kind of it's the same format, it's the same series of reviews, and that kind of I almost feel stunted my growth as an author for a while, because I was writing stuff chapter by chapter, hoping somebody would see it and comment on it, review it, and like it. And you develop like a small little micro following if you're frequently posting enough. But I always felt that it teaches you a lot of the wrong lessons when it comes to growing as a writer. Because if you're just hobby writing, that's all well and good. If you're trying to make the transition to okay, I'm cutting my teeth on this so I can learn how to be a novel writer, it's the wrong way to write a novel. That is not a great way to learn how to write a novel, using that fan fiction and fiction press format, from my perspective at the very least.
Yeah, same thing with Wattpad as well, because they both encourage like regular posting and all of that. And it's one of those things that if you want to do that kind of release, that rapid release, because that's really what it is, you kind of need to do it ahead of time. And I had one story was another fanfic, right? Everybody's surprised. But I had another story that I did, and then my goal was just to basically do a chapter a day, and I did it. It's not my best writing, but I did it. And uh, one of the things that it taught me was that I'm not a pantser. I can't pants. Like I know some people are like really big into the pantsing and can do like everything, and but there were so many days where I was just staring at the cursor, going, I don't know what's going to happen right now, right? Um, but it was definitely something that taught me that when you're gonna stick to it like that, it has to be something that you absolutely love, right? And I just wanna mention that because there's so many, books that come out and they're kinda they do the whole, like, right to market thing, so it's about writing for a particular demographic and making sure that they're happy, but it's like, if that's not, a genre that you really wanna write, then, why would you make yourself write it kind of thing?
Yeah, and there's a slight bit of truth that there are some people who are some authors who are very much okay. This is what the market is hot on right now, and they put something out there. Especially when you've got some indie authors who know how to do that, do it very quickly, and they're able to capitalize on it. Let me look at the proliferation of
Mhm.
lit RPG and harem novels. Like their authors know exactly what their audience wants, and they deliver it unfailingly. And far from I haven't read enough of it to really, kind of decide what the appeal is just yet, but the audience is there for it. And, if they can manage to do that, good on them. Um, I think I downloaded one indie harem author's book to kind of see if I could dig what the appeal is. And I actually laughed. So I laughed so hard because I DNF'd it at the moment. It starts off, the main character is a self-published indie author in his early 30s. Uh, and like the first chapter is him discussing the cover of his next book with another self-published indie author in his early 30s. I'm like, okay, there's putting a little of yourself in the book, and then there's just being that on the nose,
Yeah, there's some meta in there, yeah,
a little bit.
yeah. I
Not
always liked
saying
it when authors would write about, like, other authors and their stories going through, like, some kind of crime mystery or something like that. Like, "You're not fooling me. I know you just wanted to write self-fiction, right?"
right. And the thing is, even if you wrote like fan fiction, I was thinking about this the other day. Uh, with fan fiction, you're working if you come up with like a great idea for a story, you can't do anything with that. It's stuck there in that format basically,
Mhm.
because it's somebody else's characters and creations. But if you stop and if you want to like make that jump from fan fiction to regular novel writer, all you write to me from my perspective, all you really got to do is take the story, strip down everything that's a licensed IP. What are you left with? You're left with character archetypes. And if you work within character archetypes, then you're on the road to being, a much more functional author.
Mhm.
Let me say hello to R.H. Snow, who jumped in. Mr. Sean Rowland, good to see you.
I salute
And I
all
got
of
a
you who can pants your stories. I really do. Like, it's like witchcraft to me. I respect it. I can't do it.
who, Sean?
Yeah. Anybody who
I,
who pants their novels.
I'm a little bit of both, but it is what it is. Daniel from Whimsland thought this shindig kicked off 15 minutes ago. It's kind of did. We started a little early, but it is what it is. Uh, I mean, with all my streaming services. Royce from A Drink with Crazy for 5. Hail, two individuals who make me realize I have to step up. God bless you both. I'm not going to make any goat jokes tonight. Sorry.
I will. Where's the goat? Oh, no, it's not Wednesday. I guess I should be good. Okay, fine.
That's tomorrow. That's tomorrow. Thank you,
Yeah.
Royce. So, what was the first novel that you published?
The first novel I published was urban fantasy, and it was about a man-eating monster that was learning how to make friends and find love. And it was kind of the fruit of a discussion that my husband and I had about what would happen to an eternal being after it had like lived for so long, right? Yeah, it's like right there, Queen of Swords and Silence.
Hmm.
And My husband was under the impression that it would become a very stoic person who kind of like was just like, doing very well in life. We'll say it that way. But I had the opinion that this would be a very jaded person that was like, it's like, I have the script. I know everything that's going to happen, like blah, 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 blah. Right. And then just for good measure, I made her companion character. It's the sword in there because everybody has to have a magical sword. But this sentient sword, because it's a blade, just wants to cut and slash into things. So a lot of times, whenever she's having conversations, he at some point will bring up like, "Well, why don't we just cut him? Like, why don't we just slash this away?" And she
You know,
was,
there's an
go
old
on.
saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I imagine that applies to swords too.
Yeah, and it would, and so the funny thing about, so the sword's name is Silence. That's also the name that's carved into the side
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah, and he would, one of how folks like to ask authors like, who's your author insert in your book, and I was like, I didn't really do one. It's like, yeah, but everybody does. So which one's you? She's like, you know what? I'm the sword. Okay, leave me alone.
You end up doing that. Sometimes you end up doing that unintentionally. I found this out recently. R.H. Snow and Kitty Room both read. Are Katie's finished the Black Crown. I don't know where Miss Snow is at, but uh, they pointed out something. I'm like, this character is basically a nurse that drinks coffee, and I'm like, oh, I did do that. And then another person was like, hey, your main character is kind of a homeschool boy that reads books, and I'm like, oh, uh-oh. And then I started thinking, okay, well, my other main character is a guy with too much anger and he likes to punch things. I'm like, uh-oh. I think I just split. I think like everybody in the book is just some version of my personality.
Yeah, I've heard that argument too. That and there, how do I word this? There is some truth to it as well, because when you create these characters and you like get really invested and you want them to be fleshed out, you are pulling from things that you may have experienced at some point. So there is some part of you that's in them, but don't be like Stephen King, who likes to start a whole bunch of his novels like an author like in the woods or something like that. So he
or
has
or
so many.
or I mean, I don't mind King's tendency to always set stuff in Maine. He's kind of doing what he does. I did think it was a bit egregious. Did you read the Dark Tower?
I did.
I thought it was hacky as hell
Did
the way
my
the way he did a self insert in the last book.
Oh,
Like,
the thing I didn't really like was the part of that last book where he was just kind of like, "Hey guys, I'm pausing the story to let you know that if you don't want to get really angry, don't read these last 6
oh,
pages."
oh, I hated that. That was the thing about that book that made me cringe the hardest. Like, the author is actually stopping the story. It's like stopping the movie while in the middle of watching it for somebody to stroll in and say, hey, if you don't like bad endings, you might want to leave now. Like, what are you doing, dude?
Mhm.
You were. I could go off like Royce on this topic, and believe me, that I've got to do a stream of just Dark Tower discussion because it was both the best and the worst of King, from my opinion.
Mhm.
That was such a stupid thing to write from a writer's point of view. I can't even believe he did it. I can't believe his editors didn't say, what are you, didn't stop him. Like, there had to be a reason for that. But I'm gonna go ahead. I've got a couple super chats to read real quick. They're coming in hot and heavy. Herman P. Hunters, the Lower Forge, for $10. I'm a major pantser with plotter tendencies. But like I said, some people do a little bit of both. I don't think either one is right or wrong. Whatever works for the individual writer. My good friend Abomination AJ, the Beast. What is pantsing? Pantsing, AJ, is a writing term. You have some people who plot. You have plotzers and pantsers. Plotters are people who plot everything that happens out in their book. Pantsers are called this because they're writing by the seat of their pants. They are trusting that their imagination or their ability to come up with the story on the fly is what's going to carry them through. Some people do one or the other. Some people do a little bit of both. I do a little bit of both. So that is what is pantsing. And Timo Berman for 2 says author time. Indeed it is. Oh, Ultimate Kahuna for $1.99. Hold on, I got to do it like he does.
Okay.
Woo! Rap on, y'all. Got that Macho Man machismo going on. So that was the first one you published. How long ago was that?
Oh, 2019 is when it came out. 2018 is when it was accepted. So as everybody may have heard, things take forever to do in publishing. So the moment that my book was accepted, I had to go through the editor, and it was terrible. I've actually never had an editing experience quite that Terrible. Yeah, that's my word. That's the best one because I don't want to be too mean to
It
this person. But
it went
for
through a
example,
traditional publisher or like a
I went through a
okay,
traditional indie publisher. Yeah,
okay.
small house. Yeah, and this editor and I were butting heads a lot, and I don't mean it like in like I think Daniel might know because I saw he was in the chat. Might know when sometimes authors push back on certain changes and things like that. But this lady at one point told me that I had to change Queen Titania's name because it started with tit, and I had to ask her if she read Shakespeare, and she was like, "Yeah, I have. Why?" It's like, then why am I changing this name? Right. So it was things like that, and then I caught her not actually editing part of the book, and yeah, and at one point she sent me a threatening email saying like, "Listen, if you don't just accept my changes and do what I tell you to, we're gonna have to delay the book." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Let me talk to your supervisor." Went full Karen at that point, but
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Uh, when Karens butt heads. I was fortunate to have a good experience with my editor, and even when she made changes that uh, I didn't necessarily make. I understood why she was like, okay, this change. I'm like, okay, every change really ended up making sense, and I ended up becoming a better writer because of that. Did it ultimately get published through that house, or did you end up?
No, no, so
Uh,
that's its own episode of Jerry Springer because one of the things that ended up happening is, obviously there was some infighting about how everything was going, and at one point, like, it was so random. I got a release contract. They were like, "Sign this and get out," and I was like, "What is going on?" And then, like, one of the people that worked there sent me a sign on with me, and I was kinda like, "Can we talk about this? Like, this is happening kinda fast." But it was really sad because, like, this publishing house was up and coming, it was actually really popular in the indie sphere for a hot minute, but because of bad management that they had on the internal, it crashed really bad, so I ended up being published through another small publisher for a while, and that was okay until she reached out to me and basically said, "I want to focus on just romance, and you're not writing romance," because I wasn't at the time. And I said, "You know what? That's fair." So we went our separate ways, and I got another publisher at another traditional house, and that one was pretty terrible as well. In fact, I have lots of terrible publishing stories, which is why I am pretty indie right now. But I can't really talk a lot about that last one because they have me under a gag order. So I can't really
oh
say their name or
God,
talk about them or anything. Yeah, it's that kind of.
that's pretty serious.
Yeah.
I guess that's why there's two different covers for Queen of Swords and Silence.
Yeah, so the purple one, that's mine. I
Mhm.
actually paid one of the ladies who does the official art for Magic the Gathering for that cover. I loved it, it was great. And one of the publishers, I won't say which one because again, stuff. But they went and did the other one behind my back and just told me to suck it up. So I was like, ah, cool, thanks.
And which one do you like better, though?
Mine.
Yours, okay.
Yes.
I gotta admit, the other one, and I didn't know this before I picked it for the background and for the thumbnail. I gotta admit, I do like how that other one does look, but whatever you want, it is your book after all. And I don't know how things go with a trad publisher when it comes to a lot of the covers. I would hope there'd be a good communication between them because otherwise you can end up with situations like you remember a few years ago before he passed. Terry Goodkind got into a public Facebook spat um, over the cover of one of his last novels.
Hmm.
It was perfectly serviceable, but he didn't think it was good enough, and the artist took exception to that, and it ended up becoming a bit of a stink between everyone.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, so Ken, he's the guy that did the teal one. I love that one. I really do. But when we're talking about covers with books, they kind of still have to represent like the genre that you're writing in,
yeah.
right? And unfortunately, the because it's right over my head on my screen. This one, while it is gorgeous, doesn't makes it feel like this takes place in a medieval setting, right? But it's not. It's modern. It's contemporary fantasy. And that was
Right.
kind of.
I can see how that would, be a bit confusing. And yours is urban fantasy and romance, right? It looks cool. It doesn't exactly scream romance.
No, there might be, like, one kiss scene in that thing,
Oh,
but
okay.
it is not romance. No, uh, urban fantasy romance is very different. And normally urban fantasy romance, the romance itself takes a much bigger plot, spotlight, but that didn't really happen here. So
Um, Now you've got a couple of others that you've done, like Quarantined with My Avatar. Is that another book or is that a short story?
that was a short story. So I was trying to put together an anthology during 2020 because I was like, what else are we doing right now? Right. So I was like, let's make some quarantine with whatever stories, right? And so I did Quarantined with My Avatar, which was about like kind of a dystopian gamer girl who basically got pulled into like this kind of Eve Online conspiracy thing that was going on. And it was just fun. Like it was just like a little shameless story. Again, I was just with some people and I was like, hey, let's just go ahead and make like an anthology and put it out so that way we can get something nice out of 2020 because it was a rough year, right?
It was.
Yeah. But
Although
unfortunately, oh, go on.
although arguably for me, I got like that was when it all started clicking for me when it came to the stories. I was like, oh, I've got the characters and the setting, and that's really set off for me. That year kind of came together in a big way.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of people got their shit straight on certain things when they were kind of forced to mostly be at home for the whole time in
Yeah.
Minecraft. I don't know if this is still verboten on YouTube or not. Discussion. What's your favorite genre to write in?
Oh, that's really hard. I really love science fiction. I have one science fiction story. It's called The Persephone that I really loved. I haven't finished writing it yet, but it's definitely for that. I really like the science in it, like things like The Expanse. Like I love to read that stuff, and I wanted to kind of emulate that. But uh, after that, it's gonna be the contemporary urban fantasy kind of stuff because I really like mythos that we don't believe in anymore, kind of like still being among us, right? Like that other world kind of secrecy that goes on. And it's always been so interesting to watch other authors take on it as well. It's like there's some like really creative stuff out there that I absolutely love reading. Moon Called by Patricia Briggs is probably one of my favorite urban fantasy stories. And usually when I say it's like, it's about a coyote who, hangs out with a bunch of werewolves, people hear werewolves and roll their eyes and be like, I can't do it again. It's like, no, you have to read this. It's really good. Like, it's really, really good.
It's a little different. It's not like all the other werewolves, and a
Yeah,
lot of people roll
it's
their eyes.
not like all those other werewolves. Yeah.
I'm different, I swear. And you might get that. I think a lot of people feel that about what they write. Hail to Iron Age Media, who is showing up, and Cannoli Sasquatch. Shoot, I said his name right. Doggone it, I should have got my list. I didn't know he was going to be here. It's a bit of an inside joke. Ever since I ran across this channel, I've been calling him something different every time. And I'm starting to run out of things. I've got to redo the list. I've had a whole list of wrong names to call him every time I popped up in his chat. Controversial opinion is I used to write fan fiction, but what really stops me is doing is my horrible writing skills. Well, you got to work on it, bro. It's the only thing that's going to get it better is writing more. I made an original story about a girl who sees ghosts, and it was my first story ever. Any advice?
Read the stuff that you find really engaging and actually study what it is about that writing that grips you. Like, is it the descriptions? Is it the pacing? Is it the point of view? And in some cases, try and see if you can emulate that. That would be my advice. Uh, I don't know what yours would be, sir.
Mine would be if you are at what you consider to be kind of a beginner level, the only thing that is going to get you better at writing and reading is to do plenty of both. Write what you like, and write what you like, read what you like, and in some cases, write and read outside of the genre that you like the most, because you never know what you might pick up from a different genre, or even what you might be inspired to write in a genre that you don't care for.
Mm-hmm.
Where's it? Okay. I will give a good example right here, and I've done this plenty of times. One of my favorite authors of all time, Sarah Douglas, was originally, well, first she was a nurse who hated her job, and writing novels was going to be her ticket out of it. I sympathize with that very much. And she originally thought romance novels were the thing it was going to be doing, and she self-admits that her first few romance novels that she wrote were terrible, and then she took on fantasy. So she went into fantasy being something of a failed romance author and nailed it. Mm-hmm. And you can see the elements of her romance writing in here. It starts off with a bit of a YA love triangle of sorts, and but it ends up developing a lot more naturally. She ended up like going backwards and kind of cringing that she started that off, but her editors were also kind of like, "Hey, we kind of need you to keep this character around, and don't." But a lot of back and forth to kind of settle where those characters were going. So you never know who may, what you may get if you go in and out of your genre, but just write plenty and read plenty. The only thing that's going to get you better at writing is to do more writing, and lots of it.
I would also recommend writing groups as well, because a lot of the things that you learn from critiquing other works can also reinforce your own writing. So, and I'm using an example from Arizona when I used to live in Arizona, and I think my biggest growth as a writer was when I was looking at everybody else's writing and helping them improvement, because it also kind of like increases like your editor eye, and you start to pick up on things a lot faster, that you normally wouldn't, because you're just not used to training your brain to look for things like that.
MSK for $2 says, "Is this the real Carrow or is this Kara?" LOL.
This is Carrow. Thank you.
Carrow. Okay. We got a
Yes.
Carrow and a Kara. Kara, for those who don't know, is Carolyn, who
Mhm.
was unceremoniously fired by Limited Edition Games earlier this year for, I don't even think it was something she posted. It was a tweet that she liked. And somebody who politically disagrees with what the like that she put told her employers and got her fired. And Eric, July of the Rippaverse, went ahead and did, stepped up in a big way and offered her a job in his, Rippaverse company. And that was a great moment for me, seeing that happen, because it was a happy ending for her, and it was nothing but backlash for that company, which a lot of people were very disappointed in that. But it's a good place we can transition to. Carol, you are highly involved in the new comic book publishing company, the Rippaverse, started by Mr. Eric July. Can you tell us how that happened?
Oh, okay. Well, let's go back in time a little bit. So actually, I think this took place in 2017, 2018 as well. I was actually still teaching at the time, and I got into an argument with some teachers about Spider-Man, right? And for me, I always felt like these variations of Spider-Man were kind of washed out, because it was like it felt like cheap writing to me. And when I made that comment, I got feedback along the lines of, I was a bigot and I wasn't, really commentary. Like we've seen it on the Twitter, right? And so, like, it was to the point, because, and by the way, nobody can bully quite like teachers can, right? And so I remember going home and just being like, "Is it me? Like, am I wrong? Like, am I really
No
a
one
bigot?"
can
Like, I
ignore bullying like teachers can either. That's a personal story for another day, but I just wanted to get that out there. Sorry to interrupt you.
no, it's okay. I understand. But in doing that, I actually found one of Eric's videos that he did at the time, and it was about how there's too many Spider-Man. I was like, "Oh, thank you. Yes."
Well, there
Right?
are.
Yeah, and so I watched the video, I liked it, and at one point I went on to one of his streams, and for a while I was just a lurker, because it may not seem like it, but I am an introvert and I'm always kind of hesitant to go out into new circles. But I left him a donation in one stream saying like, "Hey, I really like your commentary. I like these things that you're pointing out. Please keep doing it." And he looked right at the camera and said, "I will." And he winked, right? And I was like, "Oh man, this guy's smooth," right? But I became an active member in his community. I helped mod his chats when I could, especially when Nightbot like closed, and I became like his like little personal advertisement to like, have people go buy like his shirts and stuff like that. And then he reached out to me, I think it was in 20 it was in 2021. No, 2020, 2022 or 2021. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should know this. But he said, "Hey, I've got some stuff in the works, and I need somebody to help me keep this organized. And I know from watching your channel, you're a very organized person." I was like, "I would love to help organize things, right?" So I was working more like a contractor, at that point. So I was going through messages, like helping him put stuff together and all of that. And I'll never forget, the day before we launched ISOM, he was like, "Hey, can you be around tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" I was, because I was working for a game company at that point. He's like, "Well, I'm gonna launch the comic tomorrow, and I would like you to be around." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. I hope everything goes well." Right? And what was funny is that I had told my boss at the time, like, "Hey, I'm gonna take tomorrow off because my other gig that I've got has asked me to be around." So halfway through that day of ISOM number 1, he asked me how it was going. So I sent him a link and he was kinda like, "Okay, I'll see you next week." Right? So my boss basically told me to not worry about it.
I couldn't get away with that in nursing. No, no, I signed up for the shift. I got to work the shift, but
Mhm.
I, that would be a strange conversation to have with your boss. Like, okay, you got to take off because you're helping a guy launch a comic book on a YouTuber launch a comic book. And
Mhm.
honestly, well, maybe because all my bosses are nurses, like that wouldn't have cleared it, and they would have been like, well, usually their go to is like, if you can get someone to cover your shift, go ahead.
Well, so it's in gaming, right? And
Right.
so so it's gaming and people usually who are in gaming also know stuff, that's in film and TV and comics and stuff like that. And so my boss actually knew who Eric was. So when I told
That's
him
cool.
yeah, yeah, so I told him and especially when Eric was making ripples, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but, it was DC, wait, was it DC? I'm getting 'em no, Marvel. Oh my goodness. Marvel actually did a comic and they put Eric in it, but they made Eric a troll and they gave it the exact same everything features of Eric, saying the exact same stuff that Eric said, and then they had She-Hulk beat him up, and I was just like, "I can't believe you did that," right? Um,
What? Did he do a
yeah.
video on this? I don't
No,
remember
he
this.
did, he did. It's on his channel, but I remember when
Oh,
that came out, and I was like, "Wow,
I
that's
I
wild."
may I may not have been watching him at that point. I'm not sure. I started picking him up like about 2, 3 years ago, mostly, via I caught Neurotic first, and that led me to Geeks and Gamers, World Class Bullshitters, and naturally and all them. Naturally, Eric ended up coming in the conversation. The more I ended up watching Eric, the more I ended up becoming a fan. And now here lately, it's just every video he drops, got to watch it. And it's just one of those prioritized things. I'd rather watch Eric's videos than watch a new TV show. I don't give a shit about Star Wars, Ahsoka, or any of that. But if Drinker or Internet Historian or Eric drop a video, or Raise a Fist especially, stop what I'm doing. Watch the video.
Oh,
You know,
Kane's got the comic right there. He said it was Jane Foster's Thor.
Jane
That's
Foster's
where
store. Okay.
yeah.
I feel like I would have remembered that if I'd seen it. So that's how I know I haven't seen that.
Yeah, but
And
yeah, no, I remember when that came out, it was wild.
Hail the Lord. No, no, no. I wouldn't do that. I've got a little more self-respect, buddy, but I appreciate the help.
But
And
yeah, and so, and one thing I kinda wanna kind of put an emphasis on is that I said my boss knew who Eric was, right?
yeah.
He's not the only one who knew who Eric was. Like, at one point, I didn't really talk about Eric in certain circles because, Eric was making commentary about things that people just didn't like, and, people in film and TV can be a little sensitive, so there. Ugh.
Yeah, that I don't, especially in my line of work, I don't even bring up that I'm online doing anything. Uh, so nobody goes search for. I don't even I don't even follow people that I work with on like say Facebook or anything like that. Like if I'm trying to take off for a day and they say, oh, they find like some old picture of me at the beach, like, oh no, he took off today to go to the beach. Like I don't need that crap. It's
Mhm.
ridiculous. So you took off the day, and that launch was phenomenal. I was watching that go down. I knew he'd make pretty good. I figured at least he was probably going to hit a million because there was a lot of enthusiasm at the in anticipation at the time. Did you guys think that it was going to do what was the final number? 4.6 million? Pretty big.
3.7 million is what we closed at the campaign, but it did make more and once the campaign was over. So yeah,
Maybe more. And
made more, yeah.
right. And that was phenomenal to see because that just to me proved that not only was Eric's audience enthusiastic, but it also proved that the comics reading audience hasn't really gone anywhere. They've just shifted their priorities away from the big two. And years of having the harpies behind the scenes at DC and Marvel and IDW, constantly calling the customer base foul things, bigots and
Mhm,
man children.
mhm,
You don't like the barely the barely concealed feminist propaganda soapbox disguised as cape shit. If you don't like
mhm,
that, well, you're just as bad as the bad guys from World War II. Like that line of thinking to me is not just borderline mental retardation. It's actually evil in its own way, because nobody asked for that. Nobody asked gets into a hobby and say, "Boy, I hope the people who make this hate my guts and lecture me
Yeah.
and treat me personally like garbage." And their go-to line is always, "Well, you're only if we're calling you a bigot and you're getting mad, that means you're a bigot." No, it's not that. You're talking to your audience, because only your audience is listening to you. Nobody's listening to you as as the creator behind, what was it I heard it say? That Spider-Man is the superstar. The writer is not the superstar, right?
Hmm.
That people aren't there because you are writing it. They're there because they want more Spider-Man. And that a lot of them have let this ego get to their head that because they're the ones in charge of it, that popularity is transferred over to them. And that's not how it works, especially not how it works in corporate comics.
No. And what happens there? So one thing I usually like to point out when it comes to like the traditional house comics is that if you take a look at a whole bunch of the writers that are on staff right now, they're all trust fund babies. And I say that both nicely and not nicely. But the point that I'm trying to make with that is that they come from a place where trying to make a profit isn't their first priority, right? Now, I will say Eric was super humble about when he launched ISOM because he just wanted to make back what he put into it, right? Like that was his end goal. He ended up like doing more than that. But a lot of these folks, when they're I guess you could say that they have the ability to write a story that they feel good about, right? Without having to worry about appealing to the market, so to speak. And that you can always tell when stories are like that because people who try to generate something that will sell will work at it a little differently. There's a craft book if anybody's interested. It's called Seven Figure Fiction by T. Taylor. I'm a big advocate for it. I like it a lot. But she's got a thing in there that I thought was really interesting. And she said, "I'm more willing to spend $8 on my cheap pumpkin spice latte." Keep in mind she said cheap. Than I am to spend on a book on an author that I've never heard of before because at least I know the latte won't suck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's what a lot of authors are always striving to do. They're always striving to be like, "Look, I don't suck. Here is some really good work. Like, here's some samples. Like, come check it out. Like, be my friend." Like, you know, and trust fund babies don't always do that. So,
Well, no, they've never actually risked anything. I wouldn't know what it's like to be a trust fund baby. My trust fund was the dirt under my feet, and everything else I've had to build up myself.
mhm.
Andrew Campbell wants to ask, where do you get your ideas for your writing process? Yeah, what inspires you in your writing to come up with the characters you create?
Sometimes not to be like it comes to me. But there'll be like a moment where I'll have like a thought or an inkling, right? And like for this book that I was kind of holding up my cue cards for, this is my outline process, by the way, cue cards. What I did with that was like, I think it would be really cool to write a story about a yarn mancer. So somebody who does magic with yarn, right? And then I was like, but what could work into that? Like, what kind of setting would I put her into? And what kind of personality do I want this character to have? And so what I ended up doing was first I kind of like gave her like a skeleton and then I looked at the plot and then I was like, well, what would make this plot kind of engaging at that point? And again, I don't want to write a book that's got like a terrible plot, right? So I usually put a bit more effort into that before I start looking at characters. Um, but I guess that's where I get my ideas from. Like they come to me and then I focus on them and I polish them and keep going at it. And sometimes I'll run those ideas by my other friends. So like the yarn mancer, I went to a biased audience. I won't lie. I went to a whole bunch of women who did knitting, right? Because that would be my target audience, right? And I was like, "Hey, what do you guys think about a yarn mancer?" And they're like, "That would be amazing." And we would all read it. And I was like, "Okay, I'll write this book for you." So
Did that one get written, or are you working on that?
that's actually the book that I wrote in the last 7-day book challenge. So I had 7 days to write an entire novel. So during that week, I wrote 55,000 words of that novel, and I'm in the process of editing it right now. So I'm hoping to have it completed on my part, at least by the end of November. and then I get to go and find another editor to work with because my eyes, while they are good when it comes to my work, I'd like somebody else to look at it as well. So
Yeah, that's no matter how much I like to feel I've caught everything. Like it took 4 passes to get the Black Crown into what I felt was like as smooth as it possibly could be, and I had beta readers pointing out. I had beta readers that were pointing out mistakes, and a friend who was pointing out this, that, and the other. And my final polished pass, which was a bit of a drudge, I ain't gonna lie, going through it, because I've read this book so many times now. I've reached that point where you're tired of reading your book. This is about as polished as it possibly can be, and it is in the hands of my formatter. So, hoping to have some good info on that. But
okay.
I mean, that does sound interesting. It's a Yarnmancer. Sounds like something you would kind of see in a bit of a cozy fantasy read or cozy fantasy. Have you seen any of those?
I have.
Uh,
Yeah, there's all kinds of things out there. I ended up reading cozy fantasies because one of my friends wrote cozy mysteries, and she would send me stuff to read. And at that time, I didn't really read cozy mysteries. So my idea of, did you hear editor? Yes, you did. Um,
I knew he
and
was going to do it too.
um, and because I didn't read that genre, when I was reading her work and I was giving her feedback, it was actually away from that particular demographic. So what she did was, because she knows I like fantasy stuff, is that she found a whole bunch of like cozy fantasy mysteries and sent those to me to read. And so I think I read about 6 of them. And then once I did that, I understood like the beats and how things worked and the expectations and all of that. So, and that's also something I would recommend. Like, if you're gonna like, I've run into people who will write something but they don't read it. And there was one guy who I was doing some beta reading for. And at one point I was like, "Do you read this fantasy genre like at all?" And he was like, "No, I don't have time to read it." I was like, "Why are you writing it?" Like, he's like, "Well, I just wanted to write it." And so I tried to explain to him about how some of the stuff that he was putting into his book were the types of tropes and cliches that were very not popular. And he's like, "Well, no, people are gonna love it. My book is gonna change hearts and minds." And once you hear that line from authors, you're like, "Okay, cool, nice font, nice pacing. Here you go." Right? Have a nice day.
Can you kind of put into words what's the appeal of the cozy fantasy? Because I haven't delved into it yet, and I've got my eye on like at least one that
Oh, like
come out.
the cozies. So the cozies are kind of like a light whodunit, right? There's no violence, there's nothing like super graphical, but there's a mystery, and somehow your main character's involved, and they're just trying to figure out what's going on, and they're gonna get to the bottom of it. And those pesky kids, man, they were the ones that did it. But it's very lighthearted. It's not and the reason my friend wanted me to read them was because I can get really detailed with like certain scenes and verbiage and stuff like that. And cozies don't do that. Like cozies are read by like old ladies who just want to like enjoy like a couple hours. So
I can see that, and it's definitely a genre that started to pick up and really catch its own audience. That little bits of slice of life stuff,
mhm,
stuff that was really popular in web comics in the early 2010s.
mhm.
Uh, I think that's where a lot of that comes from, and there's still some web comics that do that, and I've always found that those were all about that slice of life connection, and there is an entertainment value to that, right?
Yeah, I
Not,
mean, if you go to okay, so we're going to talk about one of my favorite things, which is demographic research, right? If you go and take a look at webtoons, because webtoons is pretty much where all the web comics have gone at this point.
yeah.
If you go take a look at the target demographic that's on there, it's all young women between the ages of 14 and maybe 22. I'm on there. I'm an outlier. Don't judge me. But all of the comics that are super popular on there are the slice of life. They're the romances. They're also the ones where it's like, I'm going to go back in time and do it again, right? Like an isekai, but it's not in a game setting. It's just like, I'm going back. I'm doing the rebirth. Oh, yeah. Mama Ward would know. So Mama Ward writes a lot of cozy mysteries as well. So, yeah, she's good people.
The biggest one in the fantasy genre that popped up in the last few years was, oh shoot, I forgot its name. It's by audiobook narrator Travis Baldtree. Uh, gosh, Legends and Lattes, and that one was
Mm.
self-published for about a minute and then either or a tour, I think, picked it right up, and
It
I'm
was
kind of
super
curious.
popular. Yeah.
I'm interested in reading it. I listened to a little bit of the audio sample, and it sounded well written. And it's got two of my favorite things in there: orcs and coffee.
I love orcs.
But at the same time, it's also a low stakes, cozy, sapphic lesbian romance novel, and I'm like, that's not exact. I'm not exactly the demographic for that kind of story, but I'm willing to give it a try and see if it's worth the hype. Because my God, it gets pushed a lot. Like that's probably the big dog in the cozy fantasy genre right now. But there's others that have been popping up.
It's probably got the marketing team behind it. I remember when it first came out as independent and a whole bunch of people like on BookTube were talking about it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is that if you get enough attention, one of the publishers will come and try and talk to you about your book. And then one fun thing for anybody who might be considering traditional publishing is that 90% of their marketing budget goes to 1% of their authors. So it's not unfortunately something that is across the board. But if
yes.
they can, yeah, if they find something that they're kind of like, yes, that's the thing that's gonna happen, then they are going to be pushing it in stores and they're gonna be talking to Amazon to make sure it keeps showing up in search engines. Like I kid you not, the only reason I keep seeing the Lattes book is because Amazon keeps sending it to me. I have never looked it up. I have never tried to find it outside of like their own website when they had it at the time. But, the publishers have that deal with Amazon. So, and for those of you who aren't aware, so way back when Kindle came out, independent authors actually were very successful on there, and to the point where some of them were actually able to quit their jobs and work right full time. They were having a great time. Like Ash Hivemind was one of those authors, and in
Living the
2000,
dream.
yeah, living the dream, yeah. And what happened is in 2009, the big six at the time went to Amazon and say, we're losing money because these indie authors are cutting into the Kindle sales that we have. Like, and they cut a deal where what ended up happening is that whenever you do a search for a book or anything like that, like werewolf romance or just pick whatever your SEO keywords you want are, the first 10 results are all going to come from one of the bigger publishers or one of their umbrella ones, right? And then you start running into the independent authors. So one of my friends who was making he said he was almost making twice as what he made a month writing than when his job that he had at the time. And because he said almost overnight, like his royalties were so small, he couldn't even afford gas and he had to go back into baking. Right.
Yeah.
And it's even worse because like here's the thing with like Amazon. Amazon is a bully. I mean, not I'm not the first one to say it, but they're a bully because what they would do, right, is that they would let us indie authors know it's like, hey, for you to be more competitive with these bigger houses, you might have to cut down on your prices, right? And so us in our great effort to get our books into readers' hands and to be seen and be, palatable, right? We don't want to suck, we want to be the pumpkin spice latte that somebody wants to buy, right? Um, they would lower that price, and then Amazon would go back to the houses and be kinda like, "Hey, I don't know what to tell you. Your books aren't getting sold because they just cost too much. Like, you're gonna have to lower your prices." And when publishing houses have to lower their prices, well, that money doesn't just come from anywhere, right? It comes from author royalties, which is why if you take a look at author royalties, those have gotten lower and lower to the point where a lot of people aren't getting them right now. So
And that's a good discussion to have, and I'll get to it in just a second. Let me get to this super chat I missed a little bit earlier. $2 from Timo Berman. Miles Morales is Miles Morales getting back on the comic book train.
mhm.
Yeah, that I could do a whole stream about that, but it is what it is. Where is that? I did want to highlight Storm Corey HQ, who is actually my good friend Anna Main. Just got in for dinner. The fiance, future in-laws. Yes, he just got a fiance in his life, and I couldn't be happier for my friend. So I just want to give a shout out to BDJD and his awesome guest. I'm not going to tell you what that means. I do know what it means, though.
Okay. I will not.
My friend Abomination AJ wants to know: are you into werewolves or something? And no, I think we're mostly just talking about the genres that are including werewolves, like young adults and romance.
Yeah, I mean, werewolves and vampires are super popular because they're usually written in a way that is meant to be represent like some kind of form of human nature, right? So vampires are often used to represent addiction, right? Because they're always kind of like, you have to stop drinking the blood. Like, don't drink the blood. It's like, I gotta drink it. Like, blah blah blah. Where werewolves tend to represent like that primal instinct. Are you just an animal or are you a man at the same time? Like, which one rules you, right? And
Right.
those are always really fun things to play
A-
with.
AJ's got an affinity. He likes werewolves the same way I like orcs. So that's one of his favorite
That just
favorite
means that
fictional.
you're both of men of culture and fine taste. That's what that means. Yes.
Right, right. Barely constrained savagery. That's what we are, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Back on the publisher issue, real quick, like Iron Age Media, right here about them picking up indie authors, trying to. That is the very good point. Trying to buy growth, essentially. I did a video last year called "The Game Has Changed," and it still is evergreen. It is about and it started kicked off because Star Wars author E.K. Johnston was complaining that her publisher was asking her to increase her social media presence and like go on live streams and talk to the people to kind of help market herself. And she took umbrage to that because she felt that the publisher should be handling this marketing aspect. And really, unless you're one of the Brandon Sandersons or the Stephen Kings or the Travis Baldrys of the world, they're not putting their focus on marketing on you. The smaller authors are kind of getting left in the dust. And a lot of them, she ended up deleting it and blocking me because I pointed this out. Uh, didn't want to, she was one of the few that actually wanted to step up and admit it. And it wasn't a Me Too situation where everybody else started piling in. Like, she got kind of shunned for that because nobody else in that sphere wants to admit that that is what's happening because they've got the prestige of being a published author. So, they don't want to lose their spot. And so naturally they're not going to complain about where they're at, but it's absolutely what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here in the indie authors are building up really big fan bases with really good works. And I think that's what they're doing. The publishers' biggest moves are doing is finding indie authors who have big followings and then snatching them and up and trying to bring their fan bases inside
You
of them.
are you are absolutely correct, and I can speak to that just a little tiny bit, and I'm gonna be throwing some shade out. Um, there was a book that came out a little
Oh,
while
girlfriend, I'm all here for it.
Yeah, you're here for the tea. You even got tea.
Spill the tea.
There was a book that came out a while ago. It was called Zenith. I'm gonna tell you what, this was the most terrible book I think I've ever read. But it was by two. It was a co. Whether it was I can't remember. It was a collab between two booktubers, right? So two people who often talked about books here on the YouTube channels, right? And because they had like a combined fan base, publishers took a look at that and they're kind of like instantly, we know that we're going to make money off of that because their followers are going to want to support them and buy the book and everything. I have never read. There's only one book that I read that was worse than this book, and that one was definitely an indie book, and it was worse for different reasons. But um, this book was so bad because first off, like plots would go in one direction, then it would disappear, and then suddenly another plot would appear, and then characters would be kind of like, I can't wait for all these people to die, and then be alone in the room, being like, I can't believe all these people are dead. Like, it was like, are you bipolar? Like, what's going on, right? And initially, when people were talking about Zenith, they were having the discussion of like, why is this book so bad? Where some individuals like myself came out was like, why did the publisher use these two girls to basically put this book out and prove to us that they don't care about writing, they just care about sales? I mean, I told you earlier, it's like, you have to want to make money, but there's a difference between wanting to make money and wanting to be a used car salesman, right? So and one thing that I will let you know is that in publishing houses, they have three kinds of edits, right? They got the you got to fix this edit, like they're like it's got like the deep scrub going in there fixing everything, right? It's got the light edit, and it's just kind of like, hey, go in there and fix the big problem children and do the grammar and stuff like that. And then you got the third edit, which is like just make sure that people can read it, right? That book got the third edit because there's no way a developmental editor looked at it. There's no way that a copy editor looked at, because there were some sentences where I was like, this is a fragment and this is incorrect, and like and there's so many word echoes and like what is happening right now, right? Ugh. But yeah, no, they will do that. In fact, one conversation that I had with somebody a couple of years ago, So like back in the early 2000s, if you were an author and had your website, that was like revolutionary, right? It was like, oh my goodness, people can find you on the internet. What a novel idea. But now when you go to a publisher, one of the things that the publisher and the agents will ask you is they're going to ask you what your social media presence is. They're going to ask where they can find you. They're going to ask you what you're willing to do for outbound marketing, right? So before, when they used to do the outbound marketing, now they're pushing it onto you, and you have to pay for those tickets to go to those book signing conventions. You have to buy your own bookmarks, your own postcards. You have to do it all yourself, right? Um, and it was like, and then it was to a point last time I talked to an agent where they said they're asking for your previous sales info, right? What was your sales details? And I was like, if you're an indie, like if you are a new author, right? You're not going to have any previous sales info to give because you've never published anything before, which means to me that they weren't looking for anybody who had actually been published before. They were looking for sure deals because publishing right now, the traditional houses are in a place where they can't afford to take risks. Go into a bookstore, right? Go look at those center tables. What books are there? I guarantee you it is the books that have been selling nonstop for the last 30 years. Harry Potter, Shakespeare, classics, all that stuff. Maybe you'll find something out there from like Michelle Obama or something like that, but it's the books that they know that people are going to buy no matter what. So, all right, that was my
And
soapbox.
these days their latest tactic is the banned book, which is nothing more than an unscrupulous marketing tactic for books that are been sitting on the shelf, been sitting on their shelves, or been sitting in the warehouses for a lot of these publishers, and they're just trying to push them out there as quote unquote banned. That is such a and so many people buy it hook, line, and sinker because they want to believe that there's somebody out there that doesn't want kids to read this book or that book. Like, look, you can't put every book ever just because some school in the middle of bumfuck nowhere takes their copy of Huckberry Finn off of the shelf and puts something else in there doesn't mean Huck Finn is banned. But they want to believe that the people who are doing it are as bad as they believe they are. So then you get banned books that are not banned. You can buy them pretty much anywhere. And yeah, banned books is
Yeah.
branding. It's another marketing tactic. And if you're smart enough, you can see through it. You
I
have a
don't know.
question. Go ahead.
I was going to say Mama Word was asking questions, so I didn't want her to be ignored.
How do you feel about the divide in indie authors between those who just want to share a story and those who want to be a famous author someday?
I guess that depends on like the intention, because if you just want to write a story and just have one person read it, I mean, there's Wattpad, right? But at the same time, famous author, I don't know what famous is anymore, if that makes
Right.
any sense. Because I've met the people who think that they're gonna go on the night talk shows and stuff like that, and that's not really a thing
I
anymore,
don't.
especially since talk shows aren't really a thing either.
They're there, but like, who goes on there and for a book tour unless it's a celebrity? I
Hmm.
mean, that's all a late night talk show is. Once you get past the poorly written monologue, it's a celebrity infomercial. It used to be back in the old days with Johnny Carson and Jay Leno and David Letterman. They used to have people on because they thought they were interesting, and celebrities used to be interesting. Now I wish I knew a lot less about them. Or sometimes they just have someone who just seemed like they had some peculiar or interesting take on life, and people tune in for it. But it's a dead format. It's every celebrity that comes on there has a new show, a new book, a new play, a new something, and they're just shilling their stuff. They're not there for a genuine conversation. That's all it is, and it's been that way for a long, long time. And back in the day, it used to be funny enough to warrant watching, but it's not even that anymore. So, really, yeah. Snow is right. Late night talk shows are old people sleep cues. It is. Nobody's staying up till 12 till past midnight on a weekday to watch Seth Meyers.
Nope.
Nope. And there was one back. There was one. I I kind of agree, and my answer to this is: how do you feel about the divide? I just want to share a story. If you actually want more people to see your story, like Wattpad's fine, Royal Road is fine. And you can actually workshop your story a little bit there. But if you really want to step up to the stage and create value for what you write, and so either you make it and add yourself to the slush pile at the editor's table of the big trade corporations, which may sit there until it rots on top of the desk, or you can go the self-publishing route, which has managed to generate a way for you. It's people. The quality has shaken out in self-publishing. Yes, there's a lot there to sift through, but the people that know how to make it work, who know how to make covers that are eye-grabbing, and synopsises that bring you in, and especially a lot of I call them the box set authors. They write 3 books at once, edit them all together, and then release them 1 month, 2 months, 3 months apart. So that very rapidly. And then after that, what do they have? They have a box set, and they can every so often put that on sale. Hey, 5 books for $1, right? Like that's a smart strategy, and for some it works and some it don't. I try and tell, and I've got an indie author friend, I'm not going to name him, who wrote his first book, and every now and then just agonizes that, hey, nobody cares about my book. No, dude, no. All the people who are going to buy that first book have already bought it and read it. What's the next book? What's coming in next? What is the next book that you're producing? And it's a continued body of work, a new book that is going to get people interested in your body of work, and they may go back. And now that your first book is basically selling your third book, because you just come out with your third book. Hey, give you a code for my first book free, just to try and bring you into the series. And the people that are really trying to push forward to be famous with it, you really got to stand out. You really got to do something special to do that. Mark my words, you will hear the name Ryan Cahill in the future. He is essentially the Brandon Sanderson, the Godzilla of indie fantasy right now. And I've not come across anybody that hates his work. And he is getting that kind of following. At some point, he's going to end up being traditionally published. So, going down here. Now, you did write one particular novel mention. I was on here, and this was kind of a bit of a nerdy romance novel. Can you tell us about this one? Roll D20 for love?
Yeah. So roll D20 for love. I have to give you more backstory. So, at the end of 2020, terrible year, wildest year that we've ever had, I moved from Arizona to Florida, and it was a traumatic move. And I have a whole video about it if you guys want to go watch the video of my terrible move. But at one point, I was so disheartened to write or do anything else. And I was also, if you guys remember from earlier, I was with the first publisher, or not the first, but like the publisher that I'm not allowed to speak about. Like that stuff was like really ramping up into something not very fun, and I was not sure what I was going to do about it. It was really kind of killing my will to write books. And I think so. It was on Writers Workshop. Writers Workshop is a book club that is hosted by Tamara Woods, and it's basically where authors. If you guys are not aware, authors are notorious for picking up books about how to do writing craft. Like we have so many. And she wanted us to actually have the books and read them and discuss them. So one of the books that we ended up getting was How to Write a Book in 7 Days, right? And so that was actually where the hashtag 7 Day Book Challenge came from. And so I read it, and at one point I was like, let's do it. Like, let's put this to the test. Let's see if we can actually take what works for this author and see if it works for us. Because as you guys know, methods vary for one person to another person. So we're like, let's do it. We'll do a group collective study. And so the moment I had that idea, I had the idea for like this book. And as you guys know, I'm involved with like comics and stuff like that. And my thought was like, what would happen if an industry artist ended up getting together with like, a comic book shop owner who was like a grumpy bear, right? Like that was my thought. And so like the moment that I had that thought, like this story like literally just came to life after almost not writing for a year, and 70,000 words, hammered that out. I love this story so much. And it's probably my favorite book that I've written so far. So but that's the story of how it came to be, and there's a little bit of commentary in there about what's kind of going on in the comic and comic book shop industries right now. I kinda sprinkle it in there, but don't go too deep into it because, the thing about when you write romances is that the women who read them don't really want you to dive into the nitty-gritty, they just want enough for flavor and tension, but they're there to just watch the 2 people get together, so but yes, this was
Uh,
my
I noticed that one time. I had somebody that I worked with that noticed saw me reading a book, and they were like, "Hey, would you you ought to try this? You'd like you like her." But and I'm probably mispronouncing this. Sherilyn Kenyon. She's very prolific. She's got a lot of work out there.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I borrowed the book that she gave me, and it was a sci-fi romance book, and it wasn't much my bag, but what you said is true. Like the romance aspect was the front and center of the narrative. The world building for the universe they were in was very much on the back burner. When you get the flip side to that in a lot of male written genre novels, usually the romance is always a subplot of some sort.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting dynamic that I noticed when I read that, and I was like, okay, so, and this is why I say it's important to read outside your genre, because you never know what you might pick up or what you might learn, or what you might come across that you can use in your own writing.
Mhm.
Uh, are you a player of Dungeons and Dragons? Because I know
I
you got some
am.
nerdy hobbies.
I am. Yes. I actually downstairs I have a hope. I know he's watching this. I have not given up this hope, my love, of having the gaming table down there. So like a almost like a poker table that we can like roll dice on and have like maps on, and I've got all these figures and tons of dice. I don't play in-person D&D these days, but maybe I'll make more friends and we'll all come over and have nerd night like we used to do before 2020. So, but yeah,
I,
there's one online campaign that I'm doing right now, and I absolutely love it because I am playing a plague doctor orc. It's a lot of fun for me.
I love them already.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
I love them already. What class is he?
Plague doctor falls under the wizard class.
Oh, okay, okay. I had a plague doctor necromancer that I played, and that was I always like and that was kind of the impetus for a lot of characters that I created for my book. Right, they were all like an attempt to be a very unique kind of D&D character. I have a half orc who's higher in intelligence, but not not so much in the strength department.
Hmm.
Uh, I have a half goblin, half elf who's a blacksmith, and her sister, a half orc, half goblin, who's
Hmm.
basically a fighter barbarian.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of that ends up becoming, fuel for my stories. I come up with these characters. One of my favorite character I created, I haven't brought into my books, is my swamp druid Hagatha, and always who is this little goblin druid who vomits Spanish moss using druid craft, just for the giggles of it. A lot of fun at the table. Uh, I love Dungeons and Dragons myself. How did you get involved in playing that? Because I come from a time, because I'm of a certain vintage, where girls playing the nerdy things was not necessarily you guys were as rare as diamonds, right?
Oh,
Except for R.H. Snow, who was the queen of nerddom. She was there when it was first released.
romance myth.
She's an OG nerd.
I I'll be honest. My husband was cute. That's how I got into it. Yep. So, no, I played a little bit of it before, but I think when my husband, so my husband and I both met when we were in the military, and he ended up being GM for one of my campaigns. And up until then, we were switching systems, so that didn't help me trying to figure out. So we would be like D&D Second Edition, then it would be Shadowrun, and then GURPS, and I was just like, "There's so many numbers, and I don't know what they mean. Somebody just tell me what this does when I roll it, right?"
Right.
Um, but my husband at one point was like, "Okay, so let's just take a look at your character sheet and we're gonna like help you out figure this out a little bit." And he's always like my husband is a wonderful man in that he doesn't like let me be less than my very best. So if he sees I'm not using all my abilities or something, he's gonna be like, "You could do this. Like these are things that you could do." So he's always like coaching me and trying to help me when it comes to like D and all of that. So, but yeah, no, my husband was cute. That's how I got into it, and I've never stopped.
And that's what we end up doing is as couples, right? Like, and my wife and I are very similar in that respect. In that a lot of this is a true story. You know what? That's almost identical to something my wife did when we started dating, where she found out that I played video games. This is in the late '90s. And what did she do? She went out with her own money and bought a PlayStation 1 and like 4 games so that I would have, we could play games together when I come visit her at her house.
Mhm.
And that was very sweet of her. And I think I still have one of those games to this day. Um, and it was just one of them little things that kind of told me, I think she might be a keeper. And I think we're going on 20 years now
Oh, nice.
that we've been married, 24 just together. Got a $2 super chat from Iron Age Media. What's your favorite war game, favorite tabletop RPG?
Bolt action. So bolt action is like a historical reenactment of battles that happened over time. So that's probably my favorite. But my favorite tabletop RPG would probably still be Shadowrun. I love Shadowrun. So especially if I can play like a Fizzadept, that's yeah. But I don't just play any kind of Fizzadept. I always play the one where I put my points into like against organic matter, right? But I don't do it for anything else. So I would always play characters that were really good at like punching through people like they were butter, but then I'd break my toe on a rock, right? Like it was worth it. It
Life,
was always so good.
life is like that sometimes. For me, I haven't played a lot of war. I don't think I've ever played a war game, and like those require like big tables, and I only have so much space at my house. And uh, I know a lot about Warhammer 40K, but all the knowledge that I know about Warhammer 40K, I learned against my will.
They
Uh,
simplified it this year. I don't even play Warhammer, but they simplified it to the point where I was like, I'm leaving. I'm gone. Bye.
Right. I got the only thing I ever hear about Warhammer 40K is the lore stuff and the stories and people throwing memes at each other. I have yet to hear anyone talk about playing a great game of Warhammer. I never hear anyone talk about the actual game.
I used to watch them because when I would go and play bolt action, there would be one row of tables for the bolt action people, and then the Warhammer folks would have the other ones. And they all have like their various like complications to it. But like one guy had this like down, like he had figured it out because part of what makes them different is like the structure of like the figures and stuff like that. So he figured out how to put like little magnets in the shoulder sockets so he could switch them out and not have to buy like 15 million of them all, right? But it almost and that's about the extent that I know it is. But for them to have like one turn, I used to watch it would take anywhere between like 5 and 10 minutes. So
Yeah, I think the only thing that's slower is possibly BattleTech. I heard BattleTech can take like a several hour session to cover 30 seconds of battle. Like what?
mhm.
Like that's crazy. Yes, this is. I think just part of the Warhammer culture is just the figurine painting and army building and things like that. I took one look at the figure prices and I'm like, no, I am a dirt poor DM. I make do with a little. I can turn a little into a lot, and to me, it's always fun. Like, actually, got a little D&D thing right there. I do like the crafts part of it though, because especially with D&D, me and the kids will get around the table and we'll have like a little arts and crafts day while I'm painting figures. A lot of times we end up using like these little paper stands.
Mhm.
That's big. Like I've always been kind of a crafty guy. This is like a little treasure token that I made for my
Oh,
kids
I
when we
love
play our
that.
games. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That's just like gold gold flakes in glitter and little gemstones from the jewelry section. And there's a
Mhm.
shield that was like a shield and a sword that can't fell off of a figure, so I put them to use in that. Um, like making my own tiles. That was a big part of it, and I haven't done that in a while because ever since I moved with the book, it's all. there's so much going on. I haven't had the time to sit down and do it much. Iron Age Media with $2. Never played a war game. I'm refunding both of these. I'm sorry, man. Look, I only started playing Dungeons and Dragons in 2019, 2018. Right? I'm a bit of a late bloomer to tabletop role playing game. It's fun, but finding people around me who actually share that interest took a long time to find, right? Like that's the biggest part of it. And it's the most fun in person, but getting a group together that can consistently come together is a little on the difficult side.
Yeah, that coordination.
Yeah, it is, because we all have lives and we all have stuff going on. It's it is what it is. But so, well, Carol, we're probably going to be wrapping this up right very shortly. I'm recovering from a day of fence building and got some work going on tomorrow. Spend a little time with the family, but I wanted to thank you very much for dropping in this evening, guys. If you got any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat now before we leave. So, can you give us a little inside tea on what's next, possibly for the Rippaverse?
Oh well, Alpha Core might be coming out. Sorry.
No, can't give us a date though, huh?
So the reason we don't have a date yet is because we're just waiting for the rest of the merchandise to come in, because we don't really like to launch until everything's in the warehouse. So
I can understand.
Yeah, so that's normally what holds us up. And so we're just waiting for all of that to come in. I don't know when Mike's book is coming out yet, just because that's in production. Obviously, Yara is in the works. What can I talk about? Because it's like that whole like NDA thing.
And look, I'm anxious for Alpha Core too. Eric has this habit, and I'm pretty sure this is intentional and personal on his part against me. He always drops a campaign when I'm between checks, and so I have to wait until I get paid in order to launch it. So that's why I ended up taking me like 3 times as longer to get my review and live stream out there because I got it later than everybody else did.
Oh,
Eric, please don't do that.
I can't say he does it on purpose. It's really like once we know that everything's like super green, then it's like go go go, right? So that's really what it is. So, but I know like as we go forward, we'll have like a more like streamlined like production schedule when stuff will come out. But yeah.
A couple late questions. Timo Berman wants to know how you type twice as fast as him.
Well, I outline and I
put the pantser in his place.
No, my regular typing speed is like 90 words a minute. So it also depends on how fast you type. If you're not a fast typer, I would recommend just working on that. And then the other thing is when I write, I have the spell check and the grammar check turned off, because I'm the kind of person that if I see the squiggly line, I will stop and go fix it, which ends up like slowing me down. So that's part of how I do it. I don't let that stuff hold me up. And I mean, you're going to edit it later, so just do it at the end. But that's how I write twice as fast as you. I outline and all those things.
All right, Snow wants to know what your favorite part of your new house is.
Oh man. I have a gigantic walk-in closet, and I'm saying that with like a questioning tone of voice, because when they told me I had a walk-in closet, I literally thought it was just like open the door and then there would be like, hangers and stuff. This walk-in closet is its own bedroom. Like it is so big, you can put a twin bed in there. And I was so confused about why a closet would be that huge. And the only reason it is my favorite is because when strangers are in the house, I actually have a place to put the dogs. So that's why it's my favorite.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is it going to end up becoming a closet, or are you going to turn it into like your own YouTube studio?
I thought about it, because actually, so in this room, you can't see this one. This closet is also huge. It's ginormous as well. And I thought about just putting like all my computer stuff in there to reduce room echo, because that's one of the things that happens when you're in podcasts and stuff like that. But this room doesn't have an air vent or anything. So like if these computers were in there, it would overheat and I'd be like sweating like crazy. So
yeah. Yeah.
There is room in there for that too. Yeah, no, there's actually a space allocated just for that. Yeah.
That sounds good. And we say move because for those who don't know, you ended up having to move to work with the Rippaverse, didn't you?
Yeah, so that was kind of funny because Eric called me and he was kind of like, "Hey, I would really, it's time. I need you to be like on site because I was in Florida, not in Dallas, Texas." And I said, "Okay." And then what was really funny is the next time I talked to him, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna have to take 3 days off next week because I'm gonna be driving all my stuff to Dallas." And he was like, "Wait, you're moving already?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna see you on Monday."
That was quick.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
was it a bad move?
no, it was actually really good. I mean, that last move was terrible for reasons that are in the video. Not that I'm trying to make y'all go watch my terrible video, but we knew kind of, what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And we did a little bit more research about who to get to help us with that process. And probably the nice thing about it is that we were able to like get rid of some stuff where it was like, we don't need this. We don't want to put it in a box and carry it, so it's gone. So that was nice.
Yeah, you are now neighbors with RH Snow. There's a lot of folks in the Iron Age over in Texas.
Texas. Yeah.
Texas. AJ and Ego are over there. Snow's there. I think Richard's there, and I'm right next door, literally. We got the better food though. We kept it all for ourselves. No
Oh.
Cajun culture for you Texans, unless you ask
Oh.
nicely.
That's so
But y'all are
sweet.
still invited to the crawfish boil.
We got barbecue though. I've had the barbecue out here. It is so good. I have not had barbecue this good like ever.
I'll grant that the barbecue is pretty awesome. Last time I was in Houston, I stopped and got some, and it was like, it was even just a mid tier barbecue place, but it was still amazing. The Iron Age. Sorry, sorry about that, Daniel. But you'll have to deal with where you're at. Poor Royce is up in the middle of nowhere, and I don't think he's got any great food where he's at. I can't remember what he's in Idaho or not Idaho. Well, whatever. He's up there near the Pacific Northwest, and no Cajun food, no good barbecue. That's probably why he built that smoker. Yeah, we don't want to start any barbecue fights. No, no, guys, because then you get everybody. No, but nothing gets people riled up like, oh my, whose barbecue is better. At the very least, here in Cajun country, we know whose Cajun food is the best. But
Mama Ward can attest testify. I got into a 30-minute discussion with somebody about tacos once because I was like, no, those are crap tacos. Like, you should not eat those, and it went on forever. So that's the joke about
yeah,
30-minute tacos.
yeah, Tex-Mex is I always consider Tex-Mex very different from like authentic Mexican food. I like Tex-Mex better anyway. But be that as it may, I'm going to go ahead and bring everything to a close this evening. I want to thank you for being here this evening. It was great talking to you. And let me know when the new book launches in November.
Oh, well, yes.
And
I
so we
will.
will
I will
see.
send you a DM. I will let you know for sure.
Sweet. And everyone else, thank you all for showing up. Thank you to everybody that dropped by the Rumble stream to kind of help us out over there, to help us grow where we can. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us and doing some author and Rippaverse talking. This has been a fun discussion. Who's suck? Oh, come on, AJ. No, we're not getting into that. We're not getting into that. Tennessee barbecue. No, we're not getting into that. No, we're not. We're not doing
This
that.
is a great time to end the stream. Quick.
This is the perfect time to end the stream. Thank you guys for showing up. It is, and thank you for everybody, all the super chatters and everything. Hopefully I'm all set up now to get the payouts for monetization. So your money will actually go in my pocket and go to future books. So thank you to Carrow Brown for being here. I'm author John A. Douglas, and hail the Iron Age.
Hail. Bye, friends.